Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Let's go on. We already know that once a G is formed within a certain period of time, it may evolve and exert its effect through activation. If a G is coupled with numerous sub-G related to pleasure or discomfort during its formation, then this G may be more likely to be activated, and the activation process may also be a process of strengthening the G itself. For example, a teenager falls in love at first sight with a person of the opposite sex and forms a powerful love G. After several brief meetings with this person and then no more meetings, the love G may become extremely powerful to the extent that the teenager becomes absent-minded and loses interest in food and drink. Another example is a person who has experienced the fear of falling from a height. Through a small amount of subsequent high altitude work, this experience G is activated and strengthened, leading to a severe fear of heights. Eventually, they may even dream of the fear of being at a height, and in reality, they dare not even take an escalator. Similarly, self-suggestion in people also forms G. If this type of G forms a simultaneous activation effect with certain experience G, then the G wave formed by this self-suggestion G will combine with the G wave of the experience G in terms of characteristic internal structure, possibly resulting in a completely different interpretation of the experienced content. For example, when experiencing various setbacks in life, some people may regard them as punishments from heaven, while others may see them as tests. The new G waves formed by the combination of the same experience G wave with different self-suggestion G waves will have completely different impacts on people's subsequent behavior. This is also the theoretical basis for treating some mental disorders through psychological interviews. That is, establishing and strengthening new self-suggestion G to participate in the combination of characteristic internal structures. Since psychological interviews can establish and strengthen new self-suggestion G, we can infer that the formation of what kind of self-suggestion G is often closely related to the role of the environment. If a person regards setbacks as punishments for themselves, they may have experienced events that made them self reproachful before. That is, past G has played a role in the formation of the current self-suggestion G. If a person regards setbacks as tests, they are more likely to be confident, ambitious, or stubborn. That is, certain education they received before and their genetics traits have determined the generation of the current self-suggestion G, which is also the role of past G in the formation of the self-suggestion G. In short, all those self-suggestions mostly come from people's subjectivity. Essentially, they are all indirectly formed by environmental factors. This environment may include the experiences of the behavior subject, the education they received, and even the long-term environment that shaped their genetic traits during species evolution. Next, we can discuss multiple personalities. First, we need to mention the self-view. The self-view is the cognitive collection of oneself. Under normal circumstances, all our experiences have G connections with this G. Why? Because when we experience life, the self G is usually in an activated state, and this G forms a simultaneous activation effect with the generation of all experience G. Regarding multiple personalities, we can assume that in addition to the patient's self-view in various social relationships, there is one or more other self-view in their brain. These self-view are different from each other. That is, the self-cognition are different, and they are also coupled with completely different experience view or pseudo experience ex, experiential view. In the heart of an adult man, there can be a young girl's self-view, and there can also be an old man's self-view. How do these additional self-view come into being? Undoubtedly, through suggestion. In most cases, multiple personalities are formed by the patient's self-suggestion, but they can also be formed through the guiding suggestion of others. No matter how they are formed, it is the result of the role of the environment. Moreover, the generation and strengthening of a new self-view are often related to its coupling with numerous sub-views related to discomfort or pleasure. Many cases show that the formation of multiple personalities is often related to the uncomfortable experiences in childhood. For example, child A experiences sexual assault by a relative. At this time, child A already has certain social conceptions and naturally rejects the sexual assault incident. Since participating in the sexual assault is not his intention, but the experiences does exist, he suggests the emergence of another personality, child B, and attributes all the experiences to child B. The reason for suggesting the emergence of child B is similar to what we previously referred to as competitive coupling. That is, through suggestion, the experience due of being sexually assaulted is connected to the due of another person in the brain, and this due of another person is child B. Obviously, when the G of this other person is far from the organic pathways of child A's self-G, has few G connections with it, or there is a G similar to competitive coupling between them. The uncomfortable experience of child B being sexually assaulted has nothing to do with child A's self, or it may even cause a sense of relief or schadenfreude in child A for not having experienced the sexual assault. Therefore, the initial formation of multiple personalities often stems from a protective mechanism in the human brain. For example, in this case, Child A creates child B through suggestion to avoid the pain of being sexually assaulted. However, when child A is sexually assaulted again, the G of other person, child B, and the previous experience G of sexual assault are activated again. Not only that, when the G of child B is activated this time, the activation of all the numerous instinctive G that control the life operations, sensations, and movements of child A at the moment will form G connections with it. That is, child B experiences, perceives, and exercises various activities of the body at the moment. Thus, the G of this other person, child B, related to the self G of child A, begins to become another self G of this child's body. As a result, there's an additional self G of child B in child A's body. Okay, that's all the content today. How to feel? Leave the comment below. See you next time. Bye bye.